The night was still, the kind of quiet that hums with hidden things, wind brushing through leaves, a lone car rumbling in the distance, the soft tap of rain on asphalt. The streetlights threw long, golden streaks across the empty sidewalk where Martha Jenkins walked, her steps slow but steady. She was 72, small in frame but sharp in spirit, bundled in a heavy wool coat and carrying a worn leather purse that had seen better days. Beside her trotted Max, a broad-shouldered German shepherd with a gait that was neither hurried nor relaxed, just watchful. His ears twitched at every sound, his eyes alert. Martha always took this route after visiting her sister, 2 blocks down, past the little bakery and across the quiet park. She liked the calm, the rhythm of her own footsteps echoing faintly off the old brick buildings. But tonight, something felt off. It wasn't anything she could see, it was what she couldn't. The kind of silence that pressed too tightly against the air, as if the city itself were holding its breath. She adjusted her purse strap and gave Max a pat on the head. "Almost home, boy," she murmured. The dog's tail flicked once, but his attention was elsewhere. His muscles tensed ever so slightly, nose lifting toward the breeze. He didn't growl. Not yet, but Martha had learned to trust the way his body spoke. Across the street, half hidden under a flickering light, 3 figures emerged from the shadows. Young men, maybe late 20s, their hoods pulled up, faces half concealed. They whispered among themselves, glancing her way. One pointed toward her purse. Another laughed quietly, the sound low and mean. Martha didn't see them right away. She was thinking about the kettle she'd left on the counter, about how good a cup of chamomile tea would taste before bed. But Max saw them. He slowed his pace, pressing a step closer to her side. His gaze never left the men. They crossed the street, casual at first, pretending to be just 3 friends on a late walk. Then they fanned out slightly, one to the left, one to the right, the third straight ahead. The middle one called out, "Hey, lady, you got the time." Martha stopped. Her heart gave a small, uncertain jump. She turned her head, the dim light catching the silver strands of her hair. "Sorry, I don't," she said softly, and tried to keep walking. But the one on her left stepped into her path. "Come on, we just wanna talk," he said, voice slick with false friendliness. He was taller than the others, wearing a denim jacket and a grin that didn't reach his eyes. The smell of cheap beer drifted off him. "Please, I'm just going home," Martha said, keeping her tone calm, though she felt the tremor in her hands. She tightened her grip on the purse strap. Max shifted forward, standing between her and the men. His tail lowered, his head leveled, the first sign of warning. "Whoa, easy there, Grandma," the third man laughed, stepping closer. "No need to get your dog all riled up. Just hand over the bag and we're good." Martha's mind raced. She hadn't been this close to danger in decades. She could smell the tension in the air, that acrid mix of sweat, fear, and adrenaline. But before she could answer, the man in the denim jacket lunged, grabbing for her purse. The force made her stumble backward, her shoulder scraping the rough brick wall behind her. And then it happened. The sound came first, deep, guttural, primal. A growl so low it vibrated through the pavement. Max's body went rigid, ears pinned back, eyes blazing amber in the streetlight. The man froze mid-motion, instinctively recognizing something older and more dangerous than himself. "What the hell?" he started, but didn't finish. Max took one slow step forward, placing himself fully between Martha and the attackers. His teeth glinted as he bared them, saliva catching the light. Every inch of him screamed control, not chaos, not panic, but trained focus. The air changed. The night that had felt too quiet now pulsed with energy. The men looked at each other, unsure, their bravado faltering. One muttered, "It's just a dog." Martha straightened her posture, her fear slowly giving way to something steadier. She placed a trembling hand on Max's back and said, softly but firmly, "Easy, Max. Easy." It wasn't the kind of voice one used on a pet. It was the tone of a command. Max's ears twitched, awaiting instruction. The men noticed. Confusion flickered across their faces. This wasn't a pet at all. There was something in the way he moved, how he read the situation, how his body stayed coiled but ready. The middle man tried to laugh again, but it came out weak. "You ain't gonna sick that mud on us, lady." Martha didn't answer. Max growled again, lower this time, and took another step forward. And for the first time that night, the three men began to understand, they hadn't chosen the wrong street. They'd chosen the wrong woman. Max didn't wait for another word. The instant one of the men twitched forward, a half step too close, a motion too sharp, he exploded into action. There was no hesitation, no wasted movement. One moment the street was tense and still, the next it was filled with motion, the thud of boots, and the sharp snap of teeth. The first man, the one in the denim jacket, found himself flat on his back, arm pinned under Max's powerful weight, the dog's teeth inches from his face. He froze, too terrified to breathe. Martha gasped but didn't scream. Her heart pounded, but somewhere deep down, the old confidence returned, the one she used to feel when she'd watch Max train with her late husband, a police officer. She had seen this before, the controlled ferocity that lived inside that dog, shaped by years of discipline. Max wasn't attacking, he was protecting. Every muscle, every growl, every glare was a warning. The second man stumbled back, cursing. What the hell, man? Get him off. His voice cracked as he looked around for a weapon, but his hands shook too much to grip anything. The third one, younger, tried to step in, raising a foot as if to kick the dog. Max's head snapped toward him, a deep, thunderous bark echoing down the empty street. It wasn't a bark of fear or confusion, it was a command. The kind of bark that once stopped suspects in their tracks. Martha raised a trembling hand. Max, stay, she called, her voice low but certain. The dog froze instantly, still standing guard over the fallen man, muscles vibrating with restrained energy. His obedience was perfect, proof of his years on the force. His breathing was heavy, visible in little white puffs against the cool night air, but his eyes stayed locked on the others. The man on the ground whimpered. I didn't mean it, lady. Just let him. Just call him off. Martha stepped forward cautiously, her cane tapping softly against the pavement. You shouldn't have touched me, she said, her voice calm, almost gentle. The steadiness in her tone made the words even sharper. The two standing men looked at each other, realizing they were outmatched. Not by the frail woman, but by the beast that stood guard over her, a dog that didn't act like a pet but like a soldier remembering his duty. Max's ears flicked backward, catching distant sounds, footsteps, maybe, or the rustle of a curtain from one of the nearby houses. Someone had probably heard the commotion. The world was watching now, though the attackers hadn't noticed. The youngest one cursed again, fear cracking through his bravado. Let's just go, man. Forget it. The man on the ground didn't need convincing. He tried to pull his arm free, but Max lowered his head just enough to make him stop. The message was clear. Don't move. Martha crouched slowly, ignoring the ache in her knees, and placed a hand on Max's neck. She could feel the tension buzzing through him, like electricity under fur. It's all right now, she murmured, we're okay. Her voice reached him, the same calm tone that had always been part of his training. He loosened his grip, though he never took his eyes off the men. The one pinned to the ground scrambled up and stumbled backward, clutching his scraped arm. Crazy dog, he spat, but his voice lacked conviction. Max stepped forward once, not attacking, just reclaiming space. The three men backed away in a hurry, muttering to each other, bumping into a trash can as they went. Martha straightened up, her breath finally steadying. She looked at them with quiet authority. If you know what's good for you, she said, you'll keep walking. They did, fast. Max stood still, watching them retreat down the block until their figures melted into the darkness. His tail stayed low, ears pricked forward, ready for any sign of return. Only when he was sure the threat had passed did he look up at her, eyes softening. Good boy, she whispered, rubbing behind his ear. He pressed his head into her palm, a low rumble of satisfaction in his chest. Then the world began to move again. A porch light flicked on across the street. A window opened. Someone shouted, "You all right, ma'am?" Martha nodded, still stroking Max's fur. "Yes, thank you, everything's fine now." Her voice was surprisingly steady, as if her pulse hadn't been racing just moments ago. In truth, she felt a strange calm. It wasn't the first time Max had saved a life, but it was the first time he'd done it since retiring. Her husband had passed 5 years ago, and Max had come to live with her afterward. The police department had said he'd earned a quiet life, a garden, soft beds, and long naps. But tonight proved what Martha had always known: heroes don't forget their duty. Max gave a final look down the street, then nudged her leg gently with his nose, urging her to move. She smiled faintly, brushing a strand of gray hair from her face. "All right, partner," she said softly, "let's go home." As they walked, the rain began again, light, misty, cleansing. Max walked a half step ahead, scanning every shadow, but Martha wasn't afraid anymore. She'd seen the worst of the world in that short, brutal encounter, and the best of it, standing loyally at her side. By the time they reached the corner, the distant wail of sirens began to rise in the night, drawing closer. Someone had called for help. But for Martha and Max, the danger had already passed. She looked down at him, pride swelling quietly in her chest. "Still got it, huh?" she whispered. Max gave a single, quiet bark, as if to say, "Always." Blue and red lights flickered across the wet pavement, splashing color onto the old brick walls as the first police car screeched to a stop. The night, which had been silent only minutes ago, now buzzed with the hum of radios, the low murmur of voices, and the crackle of static. Martha stood on the curb, her hand resting gently on Max's head. He sat beside her, calm and alert, chest rising and falling with slow, measured breaths. The storm inside him had passed, leaving behind that same steady composure that once made him the department's pride. Two officers stepped out of the cruiser, one young, maybe in his late 20s, the other older, with a mustache and the kind of posture that came from years on the force. The younger one's hand hovered near his holster as he scanned the scene. The older one recognized Max almost immediately. His eyebrows lifted in surprise, and then in a kind of nostalgic respect. "Martha Jenkins?" he asked, approaching slowly. "Ma'am, you okay?" She nodded, straightening her coat. "A little shaken, but we're fine. Those boys ran off down Maple Street." Max saw to that. The older officer glanced at the German shepherd, who sat quietly at her side, tail still, eyes sharp. "Well, I'll be damned," he said with a faint smile. "Is that, Max?" The younger officer looked puzzled. "You know this dog?" "Know him." The senior cop chuckled, bending slightly to get a better look. "Son, this dog's a legend. K-9 unit, Precinct 7. Served 5 years with Officer Jenkins, Martha's husband. Helped bring down a dozen fugitives back in the day." He shook his head, a touch of wonder in his voice. "Didn't think I'd see him out in the field again." Martha smiled softly. "Neither did I," she said. "But I guess he remembered what to do." The younger officer relaxed, lowering his hand from his belt. "He looks calm now, but I wouldn't want to be on his bad side." Martha gave Max a gentle pat. "Neither would I." As they spoke, another squad car pulled up, and an officer reported through his radio that 3 suspects had been found 2 blocks away, one with bite marks on his arm, another nursing a twisted ankle. They were already in custody. The officers shared knowing glances. "Well," the senior one said, "seems your partner here made our job a little easier tonight." Martha's eyes softened. "He's always been like that. Never quits." She crouched beside Max, her knees creaking, and looked into his eyes. "You did good, boy. Real good." Max leaned forward, resting his head gently against her chest. It was a rare gesture, one he used to give her husband after every successful patrol. For a second, the years fell away. The cold street around them blurred, replaced by memories of late nights waiting for her husband to come home, Max always sitting by the door until he did. Now it was just the two of them, and somehow, the circle had closed. The senior officer cleared his throat softly. "Ma'am, you should probably head home. We'll handle the paperwork. Someone from the department will check in tomorrow." "Thank you, officer," she said, her voice warm. "But I think we'll walk. It's not far." "Are you sure?" She smiled faintly. "Max likes the night air." The officer nodded, tipping his cap. "Good night, ma'am, and good job, Max." As they walked away, the flashing lights faded behind them, swallowed by the quiet hum of the sleeping neighborhood. The drizzle had picked up again, a fine mist that turned the streetlights into halos. Max's paws splashed softly through shallow puddles, his ears flicking every now and then at distant sounds, the wind, a passing car, a barking dog somewhere blocks away. Martha's mind replayed the night in fragments, the fear, the fight, the look in those men's eyes when they realized who they were up against. She should have been terrified. But instead, she felt proud. Not of herself, but of the creature walking beside her, who had once worn a badge and never truly stopped serving. When they reached her small house at the corner, she unlocked the door and led Max in first. He padded toward his bed in the living room, but before settling down, he turned back to her, waiting. Always waiting for permission, for command, for reassurance. "Go on, partner," she said softly, smiling. "You've earned your rest." He circled his bed once, then lay down with a sigh that filled the quiet room. Martha hung her coat, poured herself that cup of chamomile tea she'd been thinking about earlier, and sat by the window. Through the glass, she could still see the faint reflection of flashing lights down the block, slowly fading into darkness. She took a sip of her tea and looked at Max, already half asleep, his chest rising and falling in the same steady rhythm as before. "You saved me tonight," she whispered. "Just like you used to save him." His tail thumped once in response. Martha smiled to herself, a mix of pride and melancholy warming her chest. The world outside still had danger in it, she knew that. But with Max by her side, it felt just a little smaller, a little less cruel. She turned off the light, leaving the room bathed in soft moonlight, and sat quietly, listening to the sound of rain and the deep, contented breathing of the dog who had once been a hero, and still was.